Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace marks acquired through our journey. My name is Luz Savillon, and welcome to episode 40 of this podcast. It is insane how we are finally in our 40s on this podcast. Thank you so much for everyone supporting weekly, tuning in, and have been through the journey almost a year ago. I started it last June, so it's coming up my 1 year anniversary with the podcast, and it's been such a blessing. Recently I have been in this whole just looking back, to where I was a year, 2 years ago. And it gets me emotional. Like it really you just end up seeing that you do change as an individual, and hopefully it's like for better, over time. But they really say that every 7 years we change, like, our mentality and everything. So I think that now that I'm 25, I definitely have changed in certain areas of my life and the way that I think. um and just looking back to like, wow, like how I have overcome a lot of things, and not in like the boasting of like, oh, like what have I, I'm better than anyone. No, it's more of like, wow, like I'm just in such like I'm just very grateful with God, and just how, it's like you overcome something that you thought that you weren't going to overcome, and you've worked through things that before you thought you weren't going to be able to, or like you've made it when you thought that you didn't even have a direction, of anything. So all those things, I feel like all those things get me a little in the feels, because just looking back, a year ago this month, the pandemic, like we went into quarantine, with the pandemic and everything. And it was crazy because I wrote on social media and I did a little video about it, that last year I actually started doing, so like because we went into pandemic, I had just gotten out of like a depression. My body, like I had like flare-ups all over my body. I like had passed out in a public spot twice. My body was like in such a state of shock and just stress. I had just moved back home. Just like so many things were happening all at the same time. I had just gone through a breakup. And so all of that mixed together really got me in like a very dark place, like a very sad um, space, mentally, and emotionally, and just a lot. It was like a spiral. And I had around, I started like working out and started trying to like, I started going to counseling, starting like to really try to change my life, because I'm like, I hate how I feel. And so in March, that's like when I was like hitting the gym. I was like being very intentional about my eating and everything like that. And I was just trying to figure everything out. But during that time, I actually started getting sleep insomnia, and I would have a lot of anxiety, like a lot of anxiety. And so with my counselor, actually was like, like I feel like so stressed and anxious and just like very sad, and like just like I'm like trying to find an outlet to like figure, it out, like, because I'm actually like sitting here and thinking about stuff. And so through these conversations, we actually started Zoom meetings on mental health. And so for, I think it was like for a whole month, we were just talking about different ways that people were coping with, their mental health, on how to like, adjust to change. We just like went through we dived into so many topics. We also talked about like attachment styles and relationships, communication, just so many things. And it was so good because I learned a lot, and I was able to have other people hop on and be able to share that information. And so the people that were interested joined. From that, then I started the women's Bible study, and it was about 2 months. And that was so amazing with the girls that were a part of it. And so every week we were diving into the word, and just speaking on a certain topic. And it was really good. And then from there, I really wanted to start lives of, like of different topics as well, because this is something that I've always wanted to do, with like having conversations with other people about their stories or insight on things that they're knowledgeable about. And then from there, then I started the podcast in June. So, but the whole podcast was like, brewing of things when I was like talking with my counselor from like back in January. And so from then, it's just like how it's evolved over time, and how when you look back, you're like, wow, like, you know, sometimes you want to be fully okay. Like you feel like your life has to be perfect to actually like be able to share something with someone, or encourage other people, like, but it's like, no, like you're a work in progress. And as you're doing it, as you're helping other people, as how you're in community, as you're walking, like just things kind of start falling into place, doors start opening, um or you start kind of feeling better about it. And then you're like, wow, like it's been 6 months, like it's been a year, like, and you're like, wow, like how things have progressed. um and so looking back at like how everything started is just crazy to me. But also I feel like just so many things have changed, and I have felt like I've been feeling like, wow, like I feel like I've evolved as a person. Like it's like, I don't know if it's just like this year, or maybe like I really think it's because I'm being more intentional about like my growth. So I'm like going through a lot of changes right now. And so I'm going to talk about those things on here today. But so like looking back a year ago from like how things were, my job changed. I lost my job. And from there till now, I actually have, been freelancing for almost a year already, which is crazy too. It's like doing the social media marketing, management, as well as, um, with the collabs through social media. And then this tax season, I've been helping out my parents in their business. So it's just crazy of all those things that I've been doing like on the side. And then I feel like I've just had like more awareness of myself, like my triggers, like what I think, like why I think the way that I think. Like I feel like I've like gone deeper into that. And I feel like I've really have been learning to trust more again with church, with community. um I started going to like a new church, I would say, and it's been really, really good. And just kind of like starting new, I don't really know people there, so it just feels nice to like be able to just like connect and not feel like people know your story. Like it's just kind of like you're just like, I can be myself, I can be who I want to be here. And then also just being able to be intentional with where I'm at and who I allow near me and what voices I allow around me. Community is so important, and the people that you have around you are so important. We are not meant to do life alone, but it's also who you have around and how close. Like one day I'm going to do an episode on just like all things friendships, because I really feel like that's needed. But I definitely think that you need to have people, like they're just categories for all friends, and I think that you have to have wise counsel around you in different areas, maybe even people that are ahead of you, that are at your same area, that are supportive, that it's like a mutual support and love and friendship. um, and all of that, I feel like I've been like just more intentional, and then just truly being healthy from the inside out. um like with working out, since January's episode, I have been working out, um and just trying to get to a place of, again, like truly just loving myself, my body, uh working out because I love myself, not because it's like a punishment, or like starving myself, or like binge eating, which I've done both, which I have shared on the podcast before. So all of that, just in balance. But I like these past few weeks, which what I really wanted to talk about. I've been going through like counseling. I meet with a counselor every 2 weeks, and I have been really diving into codependency. And if you don't know what codependency is, it's pretty much when people take on other people's emotions as their own. They take on other people's responsibilities or problems as their own. They like are known as the saviors or helpers to other people because they pretty much take the responsibility away from someone else, and like they become those problems and that responsibility. And it's a very burdensome issue, like, and so I say I'm a recovering codependent because I don't think that is a diagnosis of a mental illness. I think that that's something that you can work through with boundaries, with really realizing that you have to let people be and that you cannot change anybody, anyone at all. And you have to just let things be. Sometimes you can see people sinking, and the only way that they will be able to swim is not for you to save them, it's just for them to float and to figure out how to float on their own. So that whole idea for a really long time, I was very much a codependent. And now I'm like, dang, like when I look back, I'm like, yo, I feel like these past few weeks have been hard on myself because you're just like, dang, like there's so many things. Like you're like looking back at your old self, and you're like, wow, like I really used to do that. Like I really used to say those things. Like I really used to think that way. Um, and I'm also realizing that like a lot of who we are, again, is based on our upbringing, situations that we've been through in life, and just also the people that we're around. Like if everybody around us thought a certain way, then most likely you think that way. But when you get older as an adult, you start thinking like, what is it, like that you should question a lot of the things that you think about. You should question, and you should do your own research, and you should go on your own journey of figuring out those things, because sometimes we are taught wrong teaching. Sometimes we are taught things that aren't right, and things that are either culturally or part of our social groups or our church culture. There's a lot of things that can affect our thinking. But as I've gotten older, I've definitely have been doing that work now. And so it just the whole going into the whole codependent, if I'm completely transparent on here, I'm dealing with recovering codependence in my life, being a people pleaser, being someone that, holds a lot of resentment towards people and situations, like not letting things go. And also just working through, some trauma and some other areas that like, have like come up. So those are all the things that I feel like in the past few weeks have like challenged me to be like, I don't know, I've just been like very emotional. Like I've just been very, I guess because I'm like too like tapping into those feelings and like those issues and those situations that have brought up, like the symptoms of the result of stuff that has happened. It's just like you end up being like, wow, like this is sad. Like this is sucks, and it's not to make myself a victim because I'm not. I feel like for a while though, I did make myself a victim of stuff that happened to me and of situations and how people treated me. I feel like I really would blame it on other people instead of taking responsibility of what I was allowing people to do and how I was allowing people to treat me and how I was taking on responsibilities that were not mine. And taking on and helping people when they genuinely didn't ask and need my help. So it's like then you end up feeling used, you end up feeling like, wow, people take advantage of you. So, anyways, going on that journey has been interesting, but I, really feel like I just am trying to get better, to be the best version of myself. And I made the post this week that I'm like, wow, like growth can be so painful, but it's so worth it. When you look at yourself and you say, you know what, I am tired of being this way. I am tired of having the same thing happen to me over and over again. I am tired of feeling mad, angry, bitter. I don't know why I feel so sad. I feel like I can't keep friendships or relationships. Like everyone's avoiding me, like everyone's triggered by me. I'm triggered by everyone. I feel like I am so, like, or I just don't connect with anybody because I'm so unemotionally available to people. And I just am so scared of getting hurt. Like, there's just a long list that you can look and be like, I just don't want to repeat these things over and over again. Um, it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of honesty to check your flaws and also have other people be able to do so. Other people that you trust and that are wise for you to allow other people also to let you know like those areas in you that are maybe like like for example, I told my sisters, I was like, okay, what are things that like in me that you guys are like, you get triggered by, or like things that you've noticed. And they were like, you're just because I'm someone that's very type A, number one on the Enneagram. And so that's like someone that has like it's what my way or the highway kind of thing. Like it's like I think this is right and this is the way it is, and my way is the best way. And like I'm hard to like bend when it comes to like the way that I think, or when I do something in a certain way, I like it done in a certain way. um, I kind of am like an alpha in that I also like try to like I can try to micromanage or try to like oversee other people's views or opinions. So that's like in my family, I like say things like I tell like for example, I would tell my sister like, "Oh, you should do this," and then I repeat it again and again and again, and that can be sometimes annoying. And I've reflected on that, and I'm like, yeah, like I feel like I'm like trying to take the responsibility, like trying to like make someone else do something when it's like, no, you just gotta let it be. So those are my trapos sucios, as I would say. Then those are the things that I've been working through of just trying to like look at myself and heal and get better in certain areas. Cause and also this is something that the more that you look at yourself and you do the digging and you are trying to change, once you're aware of those things too, you honestly don't have an excuse. I feel like it's more you have more responsibility when you are more aware of yourself, when you are more aware and read and have the knowledge, you have more responsibility for your actions. So like now, for example, when I get triggered, because I have discovered my triggers, things that genuinely like pinpoint and like set me off. And now when I have a trigger, I like take a breath. And I'm learning to take a breath because not every time I take a breath, but I'm learning to take a breath and be like, okay, this is triggering me right now. Let me take a step back. Let me, this is not reflective of me. The person's just reacting in a certain way, or maybe they didn't mean it that way. Whatever, it depends on the scenario. But I just am now stepping back. Before, it was kind of like, well, let me just handle this very impulsively. And codependents are also very impulsive. They go off on their emotion or their reaction. So, all these things, I feel like when you're aware of these things, you have the responsibility to like work on them and, act on them. And so, I just feel like I'm trying to really apply what I hear or read, and I'm willing to work on them. I feel like the best investment you can make is in yourself and making sure that you are whole and complete and good and healthy so your relationships can flourish. All these things that, you know, go into truly doing the work in yourself, and that will be so beneficial. It is very uncomfortable. Like I have said before, it is very uncomfortable. It is not the happiest moment, but I really want to get to an older age of being able to just be free. Like, man, like not having the weight of people's opinions, of the weight of resentment, bitterness, of what someone did or didn't do, of someone said or didn't say, um, of just being able to like look back at myself with grace, look back at my younger self with grace, have let things go that don't affect like when I have kids and don't affect when I have a husband. And I know that things will come up. I'm not saying that like by that time I'm going to be perfect, but I really hope that I don't cause traumas, for my future generations, that I can be like from a place of knowing myself, knowing who God says I am, have a good foundation, and then everything else, like life will be have its own problems, but hopefully within me, I want to have so much peace. Like it's like to be at peace and to like just let people be and just like not care as much of little things, like not get fired up by little things. So that's been the journey that I have decided to take these past few months. And it's been so good though. Like in certain areas, I see it and I feel more content, because again, like when you look back not as like, I hate that version of me, like what we talked about in the previous episode with Kate Warman, that when you look back, like look back with grace, like look back at whatever you however you acted at that time was because of the knowledge and your understanding that you had at that time. So it's like have grace with yourself in those situations. Want to close out with, this, which is why I share about mental health and why being publicly broken, meaning like telling other people that you're messed up or like saying these things. And it's not a victim thing. You're not saying that to like say, oh, well, like I act this way, because I'm broken and, you had to like justify me. No, I think you have to take responsibility for your character and your actions. But I feel like for me, I have understood that as we all have our flaws and we all have our hurts and our past and everything. But as you speak about it, it really does for you that you are able to say, hey, this is what I've gone through. This is what I've overcome. This is how I was. Not holding people to how they were in the past too, because people change, and seeing how God can transform someone's life, that God can um, take you out of a situation or help you through a situation more likely, and he can use your pain to help someone else. um, I think that that's very important. I think that when you see that there's purpose in your pain, and once we go through pain, we have more compassion and empathy to help others go through it and support others through it as well. That is so beautiful. And, when I tell someone about my pain, even if they don't relate to my story, they can see that God helped me in that area, and that can give them hope. That is sharing the good news that God can do miracles in someone's life and transform their life and help them and bring them joy, take them out of whatever situation, help them through whatever situation that they are going through. And, knowing that you can leave it all at the cross, that you can literally leave any burden, any pain, anything can be worked through. And us being able to say like, hey, like I'm messed up, or I'm working through some stuff, like that also makes it like can help with the stigma, because there's still a lot of stigma when it comes to mental health, even though again we go to doctors, when we are, we get praised to go get yearly checkups. But if you go to the mental, if you go see a therapist or you go see a counselor, then all of a sudden that means that you're going crazy, which is not the case. We all have our own situations that come up and traumas that come up in our life. And so being able to get the tools that you need to be able to work through those things, aside from what the Bible says, of course, um, that can help. And I feel like the minute that you think like, I got this, I'm good, and you just kind of like don't pay mind to it, it will come up later on. Maybe for a few years, you can kind of like just keep putting it under the rug, but that all comes out in the way that you are, like your behavior. That's like when people are very like defensive, very snappy, very rude, very bitter. Like you can tell, like, they just literally push everyone away. Like, I feel like when you get to that point that you literally eventually you'll be like, okay, like something will set it off that you're like, okay, I need to work this out, or like, why am how did I get here? And it will be all those times that you didn't deal with it. So that is something that I encourage everybody, to do the work for yourself, to dig deep, ask other people around you, like, do you see anything like, is there anything that I can get better in? Of course, again, wise counsel, not someone that you don't really know. And be willing to take that, and be willing to have these conversations, like to talk to someone. I with my friends, I tell them, I'm like, I go to therapy so that you guys can go to get free therapy, because literally after I have my counseling session, I go and talk to my friends about it, and of what I learned, and like what I have experienced, and like how that situation has shaped me. And then they connect something that they went through, that they're like, oh my God, like that makes sense. I like literally feel the same way. Like I feel like I'm that way too. And so you end up just helping each other, to also work through those things, and also you just end up seeing people differently. I feel like this is the one thing too that now, going through like my own work, I also have compassion for other people, because most people are not that self-aware for their own self, like that they aren't either willing to, or they just don't know how to get some help, or they just feel weird doing it, or they feel like, no, that's not for me. um I think that doing I think that it takes a step, and it's a bold step to say like, hey, I need to go talk to someone, or hey, I need to read this book about maybe an issue about maybe forgiveness, uh or maybe codependency, or maybe um just so many things like that you can work through and you can learn about, even if you just don't just go to therapy, which again I will always be an advocate for. But even if you're just looking up videos, or you're just trying to learn, that is so powerful for you, and that can bless your life. So I just want to leave you guys with one of my favorite scriptures, to be honest, that I feel like is truly setting this whole season up for me. Um, it's John 15:1. I am a I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself, it must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that's thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourself to be my disciple. So that is one of my favorite scriptures, John 15:1. And I think that is a beautiful, um, That is a beautiful description of what I feel like is happening. It's like God is like showing me areas, and as I get closer to Him, as I discover more of myself, He's pruning those things. He's showing me those areas that I need to work on, and I need to shape, and I need to heal. And that makes me better in him. That he makes me better. And so we remain in him. There's times that I'm like, Lord, this is so hard, like this is tough, this is not easy, but it is so worth it. And being able to share also your story is again so important. And God can use that. God can use all those branches. God can use all those areas of your life if you just also allow Him in and work through that. And growth again is painful. We feel we're growing when we look at situations differently, when we act differently in situations that before maybe we would be triggered or we would react, we take a step back, or we just like reply with okay, or we don't reply, or whatever the case may be. So I really wanted to encourage you guys with that today. And it was nice talking in this podcast. I know we've had a lot of amazing guests. And so I am glad to be able to kind of wrap this month's episodes off. So thank you guys so much for joining on this week's episode. I appreciate all the support. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow me at Elizabeth Sabi for just more weekly, daily updates. It's crazy. I have looked at like my stats of who listens, and there's people from all over the world, which is insane. I'm like, how do you find me? So if you found me from across the world, if you are a listener from across the world, please reach out to me, because I would love to see how you even found. And like it's such a great way to connect. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Have a great week.